Welcome back to Legal Lens Zimbabwe, where we break down complex legal and development issues in a way that's smart, sharp, and maybe even a little fun. Today, we're diving into the world of multilateral financial institutions, those powerful players shaping not only global economies, but also the laws and institutions that support them. Multilateral financial institutions, MFIs, play a pivotal role in shaping global economic landscapes, particularly in developing nations where financial stability and legal frameworks are essential for sustainable growth. Established to promote international monetary cooperation, facilitate trade expansion, and support economic development, institutions such as the International Monetary Fund, IMF, World Bank, and African Development Bank, AFDB, offer financial assistance, technical expertise, and policy guidance to nations in need. Beyond their economic influence, MFIs significantly impact legal and institutional development, fostering governance reforms, regulatory frameworks, and legal protections essential for economic progress. Their intervention extends to structural adjustments, anti-corruption initiatives, and financial inclusion policies, ensuring that legal systems complement economic advancement. However, concerns such as debt dependency, geopolitical influence, and human rights considerations raise important questions about their effectiveness and long-term impact. This segment explores the dual role of multilateral financial institutions in law and economic development, examining their contributions, challenges, and implications for global financial stability and national sovereignty. The World Bank, role and engagement in development. Origins and establishment. The World Bank was founded in 1944 under the Bretton Woods Agreement, alongside the International Monetary Fund, IMF. The UN Monetary and Financial Conference was held at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, 1 year before the end of World War II, where nations convened to establish mechanisms for economic recovery and long-term development. This conference resulted in the creation of the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, IBRD, the International Development Association, IDA, expanding financial assistance to low-income nations. Initially, the World Bank focused on rebuilding war-devastated economies but later shifted toward financing economic growth in developing nations. Historical financial assistance by the World Bank. First loan. The World Bank's first loan was to France, followed by loans to other European nations to aid post-war reconstruction. First loan to a non-European country. Chile received $13.5 million for hydroelectric power generation, marking the World Bank's expansion into global development financing. As the Marshall Plan took over European reconstruction, the World Bank increasingly focused on developing countries, providing financial aid for infrastructure, education, and economic reforms. World Bank's support for Zimbabwe. The World Bank provides financial assistance and policy advice to Zimbabwe, particularly in areas like financial inclusion and economic growth. It has backed Zimbabwe's financial inclusion strategy, aimed at expanding access to financial services, supporting entrepreneurship, and fostering development. 2025 to 2026 Country Engagement Note, Center. The World Bank Group's Board of Executive Directors has approved a new Country Engagement Note, Center, for Zimbabwe, covering 2025 to 2026. This strategic framework aligns with Zimbabwe's Vision 2030 and National Development Strategy, 2021 to 2025. The strategy contributes to the World Bank's global mission of eradicating extreme poverty and promoting shared prosperity. CEN's two main pillars. 1. Macroeconomic stability and economic growth. Focuses on reducing economic distortions, improving fiscal policies, and strengthening economic governance to create a favorable business environment for private sector-led growth. 2. Social resilience and climate adaptation. Prioritizes pro-poor services, women empowerment, and support for vulnerable households. Includes climate resilience measures and renewable energy investments to enhance sustainability. The 2025 to 2026 Center reflects the World Bank's ongoing commitment to Zimbabwe, helping the country achieve inclusive economic growth, climate adaptation, and social development. International Monetary Fund, IMF. What is its role in development? Well, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, was established in 1944 through the Articles of Agreement, a treaty signed by 44 founding countries. Since its inception, IMF has grown to 191 member countries, making it one of the most influential financial institutions in the global economy. IMF is governed by and accountable to its member nations, ensuring that policies reflect collective economic interests. IMF has three core missions aimed at fostering global economic stability and growth. 1. International monetary cooperation. It strengthens global financial relationships by promoting stable exchange rates and preventing financial crises. It also encourages countries to adopt balanced monetary policies to reduce global economic volatility. 2. Trade and economic growth. IMF supports open markets and policies that encourage global trade expansion. It also helps nations boost productivity, increase job creation, and maintain economic well-being. 3. Preventing harmful economic policies. IMF discourages trade restrictions, currency manipulation, and unsustainable fiscal policies that could threaten global prosperity. To achieve its missions, IMF provides three primary forms of support. 1. It offers policy advice.
We see every day how events in one country can spill over to neighbors, across continents, to the whole world. A trade disruption can raise the cost of food in a neighboring country or affect supplies on a distant continent. When one country raises interest rates, the cost of borrowing to buy a car or a washing machine could go up somewhere else. Our job at the IMF is to spot such risks and help address them. How? Every year, a team from the IMF visits just about every one of its 189 member countries. The team talks to the government, central bankers, and important actors in the local economy, such as labor and business leaders, academics, activists, and students. It looks at how the country can promote growth and stability, prevent financial crises, and ultimately improve people's lives. That information goes into a report, a kind of economic health check. These reports are like puzzle pieces that the IMF fits together to form a picture of our global economy. The global picture allows a country to share its experience while also benefiting from the knowledge of other members. It also allows the IMF to identify risk and warn governments to take action. And with this information, we can make recommendations that will benefit the individual country, the region, and the world.
It monitors economic trends and financial developments in member countries, provides recommendations on fiscal policy, monetary policy, and financial stability. It also helps countries mitigate economic risks and navigate crises. 2. It provides financial assistance. It provides loans and financial aid to countries facing balance of payments problems or economic downturns. It supports nations recovering from financial crises, natural disasters, or structural economic weaknesses. IMF loans often come with conditions, requiring borrowers to implement economic reforms to improve fiscal health. 3. It also offers capacity development. Offers technical assistance and training programs to help governments strengthen institutions and policy frameworks. Supports public financial management, banking regulations, and economic governance improvements. IMF plays a critical role in supporting economic stability, particularly in developing countries. It assists nations in overcoming financial crises, strengthening banking systems, and implementing structural reforms. Works alongside international bodies such as the World Bank and regional development banks to coordinate global economic strategies. While it promotes market-driven growth, some critics argue that its loan conditions and austerity measures can sometimes hinder social development. IMF remains a key player in the global financial system, providing monetary stability, trade support, and policy guidance to its member nations. While it has contributed to economic recovery efforts worldwide, its role remains subject to debate, particularly regarding its impact on developing economies and the conditions attached to its financial assistance. Examples of relations between IMF and Zimbabwe. It is worth noting how external factors may influence IMF reach for development. An example would be this headliner.
Let me finish off from here with regional financial institutions. The African Development Bank, AFDB, was established to finance and support economic and social development across Africa. Foundation meeting, 1964 in Khartoum, Sudan. A group of African leaders ratified the multinational agreement establishing AFDB. Monrovia Conference, 1961. Heads of state and government convened to form the Monrovia Group, emphasizing Africa-led development. Official agreement, 1963. 23 African governments signed the formal agreement on August 4, 1963, laying the foundation for AFDB. Agreement enforcement, September 10, 1960. For the agreement came into force, officially launching AFDB operations. Impact and growth. Over the past 5 decades, AFDB has financed more than 4,100 development projects, contributing to Africa's economic expansion and infrastructure development. In 2010, Africa's population surpassed 1 billion, and AFDB had expanded to 79 member countries. The bank has consistently maintained a AAA rating from leading financial agencies, reflecting its strong financial standing and credibility. Development approach and key initiatives. AFDB prioritizes community engagement, ensuring local populations play an active role in shaping development projects. It focuses on women's empowerment, education, and structural reform, integrating social considerations into economic growth strategies. Supports major initiatives such as debt relief programs for heavily indebted poor countries, HIPCs, regional integration efforts to enhance intra-African trade and cooperation, New Partnership for Africa's Development, NEPAD, where AFDB serves as a key implementation partner. Contributions to global and regional development goals. AFDB plays a vital role in achieving both United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and African Union's Agenda 2063 by financing infrastructure projects, transport, roads, housing, energy development, renewable energy expansion, education and skills training, improving literacy and employability. In Zimbabwe, AFDB has supported projects in renewable energy development, helping reduce poverty and promote sustainable economic growth. These are examples of projects with Zimbabwe and AFDB. AFDB remains a cornerstone of Africa's development, fostering economic resilience and social progress through financing, strategic planning, and stakeholder engagement. Its initiatives continue to shape Africa's future, ensuring sustainable growth and integration within the global economy. We cannot talk about African Development Bank without talking about their 10-year strategy. New Development Bank, NDB, and its role in global development. The New Development Bank, NDB, formerly known as the BRICS Development Bank, was established by Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, BRICS, to provide an alternative source of funding for infrastructure and development projects in emerging economies. The term BRICS was coined by Jim O'Neill, a former economist at Goldman Sachs, to represent the world's fastest growing economies. Between 2000 and 2008, BRICS' share of global GDP increased from 16% to 20%, highlighting their expanding influence in the global economy. Despite their economic power, the ability of BRICS countries to reshape global development remains debated. Influence in Africa and challenges. There is ongoing discussion about BRICS' role in African development, with some arguing that their policies must be preceded by political reforms to ensure effective implementation. Governance and political stability are critical for BRICS-led initiatives to achieve long-term success. Without institutional reforms, development projects may face bureaucratic inefficiencies and governance challenges in some African nations. Infrastructure and Development Bank of Zimbabwe, IDBZ, and the NDB connection. The Infrastructure and Development Bank of Zimbabwe, IDBZ, plays a key role in financing development projects within Zimbabwe. As part of its 2025 work program, the Independent Evaluation Office, IEO, of the New Development Bank organized a training workshop in October, focusing on NDB's independent evaluation processes. The goal of such training sessions is to enhance IDBZ's capacity for project assessment, financial management, and governance standards, aligning Zimbabwe's infrastructure initiatives with global best practices. The New Development Bank represents a major shift in development financing, providing emerging economies with alternative funding mechanisms outside traditional Western-led financial institutions. However, political stability, governance frameworks, and economic policy alignment remain crucial in ensuring that BRICS-led development efforts, particularly in Africa, achieve their intended impact. So, as we wrap up, what are the concerns with using multilateral financial institutions in development? Imagine getting a loan from someone who smiles politely, hands you a check, and then quietly rewrites your entire national budget. Welcome to the world of multilateral financial institutions, where the money flows, but so do the strings. Multilateral financial institutions, such as the World Bank, International Monetary Fund, IMF, and regional development banks, play a significant role in financing economic development. However, their involvement in developing countries has raised serious concerns, particularly regarding debt sustainability, human rights protections, corruption, and geopolitical influence. 1. Debt traps. Debt traps occur when countries become overly dependent on loans from multilateral financial institutions, leading to unsustainable debt burdens. Instead of facilitating long-term development, excessive borrowing can create cycles of dependency where nations struggle to repay their debts, often sacrificing social and economic priorities. For example, the IMF Structural Adjustment Programs, SAPs, in Africa. In the 1980s and 1990s, many African countries borrowed heavily from the IMF and World Bank under SAPs, which required austerity measures such as cuts in government spending, privatization, and reduced subsidies. These conditions often weakened healthcare, education, and social welfare systems, causing long-term developmental setbacks. Countries such as Zambia and Nigeria struggled with high debt burdens, forcing them into repeated renegotiations with creditors. Then there is the Sri Lanka's debt crisis, 2022. Sri Lanka took massive loans from international lenders and China, leading to economic collapse when it could no longer service its debt. As a result, the country faced food shortages, inflation, and political instability, exacerbating economic difficulties rather than fostering sustainable development. 2. Human rights protection and corruption risks. Many multilateral institutions fund development projects in politically unstable regions, often without adequate safeguards for human rights and corruption. Governments may misuse development funds, diverting money meant for social programs into private pockets or political campaigns. Some infrastructure projects displace indigenous communities, harm environmental ecosystems, or empower authoritarian regimes without accountability. For example, the Chad-Cameroon oil pipeline, funded by the World Bank. Intended to boost economic growth, this project faced criticism when the Chadian government diverted oil revenues away from poverty reduction programs into military spending. This raised concerns about human rights abuses as the government intensified crackdowns on political opponents using development-linked funds. Then there is the corruption in IMF bailouts. Argentina received IMF bailouts to stabilize its economy but faced criticism for mismanagement and political favoritism in how funds were distributed. Instead of fostering economic recovery, wealthy elites benefited disproportionately, while ordinary citizens endured inflation and economic instability. 3. Ulterior motives, extending global geopolitical influence. Multilateral financial institutions are often seen as instruments of global power dynamics, where loans and financial aid are used to extend geopolitical influence rather than genuinely assist developing countries. For example, China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, and debt diplomacy. Critics argue that China uses infrastructure loans to gain leverage over developing nations, as seen in projects across Africa, South Asia, and Latin America. Countries such as Djibouti, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka have struggled to repay Chinese loans, leading to situations where China gains control over strategic assets, such as ports and railway infrastructure. So while multilateral financial institutions promise a lifeline, let's make sure it's not tied to an anchor. Because when it comes to development, we want nations to rise, not sink under friendly financing with fine print thicker than a law textbook. So yes, multilateral financial institutions can reshape economies, uplift nations, and drown you in 400-page reform reports faster than you can say a macroeconomic stabilization. But hey, at least they don't charge late fees. Yet. See you next time.